Yo, I'm Ryan Fila, and if you're new here, I've been a little bit all over the place recently. I was in Colombia for about 3 months. I was in Peru before that, which is what we're gonna talk about today. Then I came back to the US and I was broke and I didn't know what I was gonna do. And then the war in Ukraine started and I went out there and captured some stories. But now I'm back in Denver, Colorado, and today we're gonna be going back down to Peru because I get a lot of questions out of Peru in specific. And we're gonna talk about how to hike Machu Picchu for less than $400. This morning, just for fun, I searched in Google all-inclusive hikes to Machu Picchu, and the first one that came up said starting at $3,300, and I was like, what? That is crazy, because when I went and hiked it, I did it for less than $300, and today I'm going to give you a price range from about $275 to $400, because there really is a range, and your comfort level changes while you're out on the hike. I'm honestly overestimating a lot of the prices. It could cost you a lot less. You know, I don't want to ballpark low numbers, and then you're like, yo, you lied to me, it costs more. I'd rather the other way around. So we're gonna get into it starting in Cusco because that's where 99% of you starting this hike will start. And what you want to do is get a colectivo ride from Cusco to Moyepata. Colectivo, if you're not familiar with South America and how they kind of use transit and public transport, it's vans typically that locals just get around on. Most tourists don't know about them unless they spend a decent amount of time there or they have some type of connection, but it's by far your cheapest way to get from Cusco to Moyepata. Now, it is a little bit more difficult because they're harder to find. It's not like there's a big bus station. You know, they might have a space where they're normally coming from, but it's not as clear. I do have it in my Google Maps, which I'll reference a lot in this video because I have each point specifically labeled for this entire hike, and it will save you hundreds of dollars on your Peru trip, and it's only 10 bucks. Now, for that ride, you shouldn't pay more than $10. If you pay any more than that, you're definitely getting overcharged. But once you get to Moyepata, you're gonna change into a taxi, which you will take to SORAYPAMPA. Now, you don't have to take the taxi because this journey is a part of the Salcantay hike, but it's not that great. Making a quick pit stop at our taxi driver's house. We must have to get some breakfast. No, just kidding. He wanted to grab a tire in case there's an emergency. I took a taxi because I wanted to get up to Lake Umantay and I'd rather hike that the first day I was there. But if you're somebody that's like, I really want to hike the whole Salcantay, then you want to start in Moyepata and hike to Soraypampa. That taxi ride is a little bit more expensive, but it still shouldn't be any more than $15. Now that we're at Soraypampa, let me just back up and say this overall budget, this $275 to $400, isn't including airfare. We're hiking Salcantay instead of Inca Trail because Inca Trail is extremely expensive in comparison because you have to get a permit, you have to get tour guides, which isn't bad if you want to hike that because a lot of the reasons you pay that money is to make sure the guides and stuff are treating their people fairly and equally and they're taking care of the trail, and it's just a much busier route, so they have to charge a little bit for that. But Salcantay is free to hike. You do not need a tour guide, so if people tell you that, that's not true. And there's accommodation all the way around on the Salcantay trail. Like, you can hike it with literally a backpack. Like this type of backpack, you could hike the 4 to 5 day hike up Salcantay to Machu Picchu and be fine. Have some water, have a few things in here, have some space for food. Again, piggybacking off of that, because you are doing this budget, if you go in the peak season, that's a little bit more risky and you might want to bring a tent. But if you're outside of that, accommodation is going to make it happen. If you're willing to pay them to stay there, then they'll make it happen for you. Here we are at Soraypampa, and this is your first main stop. What I would do is get here, hike up to Lake Umantay for the day, hike back down. They'll have food, they'll have stuff for you there, and accommodation for the night. For the food, overall, you shouldn't pay more than 10 to 20 bucks a day. Accommodation is kind of the same thing. There's a range, I would say, between $7 and $15 a night. If you're paying more than that, it's either peak season or you're paying a premium on that. Now, if you're okay with it and it's a nicer accommodation, do your thing. But if you're doing this on like a strict budget, that's the range I would work with. Now, on top of that, in Soraypampa, when you get dropped off by the taxi, you'll want to walk past. There's like a couple glamping spaces that are super nice and cool looking, but they're expensive. If you hike past that, there's a couple other spaces that are really cheap with some sweet people. Again, it's down in the Google Maps in the description, but there's like some huts that you can stay in for really cheap, and they're just amazing, super sweet people. Okay, that's day 1. Now after SORAYPAMPA, you're gonna leave, and the second day is a hike. You're gonna hike to the peak, which is the base of Salcantay Mountain. You're gonna be looking up at this huge snow-covered, I think it's like 20,000 plus foot mountain, and you'll want to have lunch there. So my other recommendation for day 2 is to get lunch at your first accommodation spot. If you're a little bit more nervous about food and you want to pack in food, this is the one meal that I would specifically look for. That lunch on the second day, you will want to have. The rest of your meals, you can kind of wait until you're at the accommodation and just hike with snacks. But having a lunch, sitting and looking at this mountain is amazing. Plus the hike up there is tough. And you'll be tired and you'll be hungry and you'll be glad you packed some type of lunch. So you'll come down from the base of Salcantay and you'll come into COLCAPAMPA, and there'll be a few different accommodation spots. And again, you can just walk in as long as it's not extremely busy in that season and ask for a night to stay. It's just like a hotel. It's the same thing. The reality is those places are probably going to make room for you or make it happen because that's in their heart, and you're also going to pay them to stay, so they'll do whatever they can to house you. You're doing this on a budget, so you have to be open to the adventures that this risk kind of brings, right? Like if you want to do the luxury thing and you want it solid and you want all those things, do that, but you're going to pay a premium for it. In my experience in doing and having adventures like this, that like risk and edge and a little bit of unknown creates the best experiences. We had roaches a few nights on this hike. Oh shit! That's a huge roach. I'm out. Bro, kill it! Oh, it's dead. You are sleeping 0 hours tonight. And it was absurd. If you know me at all, roaches are like my least favorite bug. But it's a memory I'll never forget. Somewhere up here, I'll put the video from hiking Salcantay with a complete stranger who ended up being a subscriber and found me in Cusco. A few of those unknown pieces were like my favorite parts of the entire adventure. Okay, that's enough. Let's get into day 3. So you're gonna stay at COLCAPAMPA, same thing, $7 to $15 a night, same price on the meals, $10 to $20. I would say during the day to pack snacks for sure. While you're hiking, you'll want some snacks. Each of these accommodation spaces will have it, and they'll have bottled water for you as well. So pack that in your bag, and I wouldn't say you need more than $10 to $15 a day for that, and that's, like I said, that's on the high side. All right, morning of day 3, you leave COLCAPAMPA and you're heading to Santa Teresa. Santa Teresa is a little bit more of a town. There's way more people there. There's shops, there's coffee shops. It's more civilized than like how we think of groups of people and like comfort level and travel. There are a ton of accommodation options, but I would range in that same space unless you get to this point, you're like, yo, I'm exhausted. I want somewhere nice. I want a beautiful big dinner, which really isn't going to cost that much anyways. But you can get a place for $7 to $15, pay $10 to $20 for food, and stay on your budget. And Santa Teresa is probably the best coffee I've ever had in my life. On day 3, you'll be hiking through some coffee regions, and you can grind your own stuff and you can really interact with the farmers. But Santa Teresa is like in that region, so all the coffee they get to artisan spots is from that area, and it's so good. It might have been biased because I was pretty exhausted at this point, but it's delicious. In day 4, you're gonna hike from Santa Teresa to Aguas Calientes. It's a little bit of a shorter day. It's a pretty calm hike. After you leave Salcantay, like the base of Salcantay, everything is pretty much downhill. There's definitely some uphill parts, but your overall trajectory is downhill. So day 4, you hike to Aguas Calientes, and Aguas Calientes is literally a city just built around the tourism of Machu Picchu. So again, there's a lot of places to stay. There's hostels, there's expensive, beautiful hotels. You have the whole range. The market is a really good place to go if you're trying to stay on budget. Again, that's in the map, in the description, like the specific location of it. And the hostel that I stayed in is also down in the description as well. That place was cheap and budget friendly. And I would say in Aguas Calientes, get yourself a nice meal, get a shower. This is kind of like that you made it place. because you're gonna stay there for the evening and then wake up and do Machu Picchu in the morning. This is what I highly recommend if you want to get the most out of going to Machu Picchu. It's stay the night in Aguas Calientes for one night and then wake up and hike super early up to Machu Picchu for open. Like, be at the door when it opens, because once you get in there, there are going to be people coming up on buses, but more than likely they'll be coming behind you if you go and hike it, and you'll get to see Machu Picchu like basically empty, because you'll be one of the first people inside for the day. And that feeling, that place, that energy completely empty is gorgeous, unlike anything I've seen in the world. This last day is also the most expensive day because you have to get a ticket to Machu Picchu, which you should book ahead of time. I'll put that link down in the description as well, so you can go to the right website and make sure you're doing it right. That's $60 if you're a foreigner. It's $31 if you're from Bolivia, Colombia, and Ecuador, anybody in the Andean region. And the other expense on that day is the train ride. The train ride from Aguas Calientes back to Cusco is like $75 to $100, but it is so worth it. After you hike 5 days, I mean, you're hiking miles. This is a big hike. And then you get up to Machu Picchu and you have this incredible experience. You'll want to come down and ride the train. It's a little bit expensive, but I 100% think it's worth it. You could take a colectivo all the way around and back down to Cusco, but that ride is going to be rough through the Andes Mountains. As far as like the roads go, it's going to be packed and it's just not going to be worth it in my opinion. The train ride is gorgeous. It's super calm and tranquilo, and it's magnificent. Going through the mountains in that train, you go by the Incan Trail a few times, but the views are gorgeous. Yeah. And now you're back in Cusco and you just hiked Machu Picchu for less than $400. If you're planning your trip to Cusco or Peru in general, send me a DM on Instagram. I reply to all of them. I can help you wherever I can. Like I said, that map is down in the description and it's the best resource that I can actually give you. Again, my name's Ryan Fila. I'll drop a couple stories up right here, some more tips, and probably a dope experience I had while I was there. But until next time, you go out and live your limit, and I'll see you there.